Feature number 27 is the crop tool, and the crop tool allows you to do a few things. First of all, you can clip away the edges of an image so that you can hone in on just those details you want to keep. Or, of course, you can compose an image in post as well. You can straighten an image that's crooked. That's thing number 2 you can do. And then finally, if you take a little bit of time up front, you can, rather than cutting away the edges, getting rid of the stuff that you don't want, you can merely hide it so that you can bring it back later if you so desire. Very flexible way to work, as you'll soon see. I'm working inside of a photograph from George Alexander, and I don't know what it is about images like this. I love them so much. This woman pretending to hold up the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I just think that's such a fantastic concept that it's old school image editing is what it is. It's real. She's actually there holding up the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And my only problem with the image, and this is so funny, I was looking for an image on Fotolia of Pisa, of the Leaning Tower, because it's such a great thing to crop and straighten for obvious reasons. And what I was amazed by is how many of the images were legitimately crooked, because either they have the basilica leaning, and that makes the tower look like it's leaning that much more. Or in this case, the tower isn't leaning enough. Notice that the world is sloping away from this woman. So if this image was actually straight, and notice this thing right here, this little column is sort of leaning over to the left. If everything was straight, the Leaning Tower of Pisa would actually be leaning that much more. And this woman's physical exertion would make that much more sense. So we're going to straighten the image and we're going to crop it. And we're going to do that using the crop tool right here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the crop tool. Now, you can enter specific width and height values, resolution values as well. If you want to, you can even match a different image. If you have another image open, you want to match it, bring that image to front, click on front image, switch back to this image, crop as desired. The two images will then match each other exactly. However, I'm going to perform a freeform crop, and I'm going to do that by zooming out just a little bit here and dragging around the image with the crop tool just to establish a base crop boundary at this point. We can still edit it, of course. Now, by default, the shield value is way too high. So you can see that there's black outside the crop boundary, and that black can be modified to your heart's content. You can change how much blackness you're seeing. And I prefer to reduce this opacity value quite a bit, actually, in the case of this image. I'm going to take it down to 25% so that we have just a little bit of the so-called shield. You don't have to have it at all. You can turn it off if you don't need it. Anyway, let's leave it on, but a lower opacity. And then I also want to go ahead and straighten the image. Right now I would just crop it, but I want to straighten it. So what I need to do is I need to match one of these edges, either a horizontal or vertical edge, with something that should be horizontal or vertical inside the image. And I'll go ahead and zoom in here. And the easiest thing to match is the horizon line in most images. And in this image, that's exactly what we want to match. Notice, look at that. The ground is sloping up like crazy. We don't want that. All right, so to rotate a crop boundary, you move your cursor outside the boundary like so. And then you go ahead and drag. And you can tell that you're going to rotate because you see this little rotate cursor. And then I'm going to drag this edge upward, and I'm just going to keep rotating the boundary until it exactly matches, or more or less matches. Getting an exact match is a little bit difficult, but you can keep working on it until it seems to be right. So notice, this is not the final edge I want. I'm just trying to match the edge against the land there. And I'll go ahead and zoom out once again. Take this boundary down a little bit and make sure that I'm matching the vertical edge to this column so that everything's straight, so that I'm just doing a second check at this point. All right, now I'm going to drag this corner out to this location here. Now, one of the things I got to tell you, those of you who are photographing images, which I imagine is virtually all of you, watch the appendages. You do not want to be cropping feet and hands and anything if you can avoid it. There's no excuse for having to crop a single thing about this woman here, except that we're too close to the edge. So we're going to have to take out that foot. But if we just had a little bit more expansion, if I could have grabbed the photographer and nudged him over to the right just ever so slightly, a little bit down as well, we didn't need all this sky, then we would have had a better image to work with. So when in doubt, by the way, this is a really great technique. When in doubt, go ahead and compose your shot there inside the camera and then take a step back. Just step one step back and you will open up the shot just a little bit. You can always crop and post, but you can't make up detail that you cropped inside the shot. All right, anyway, but I am going to have to crop away your foot. Now notice something about this. I can move this boundary down like so, and I can move it out as well if I wanted to. But anything that's appearing inside this gray pasteboard, once I've applied the crop, is going to appear in the background color, which is going to be white. So we'll have these wedges of white in the background. We're not going to miraculously make up detail, in other words. All right, I'll drag this edge in. Now notice how the snapping is working. Photoshop is going to go ahead and snap your dragged handle. which doesn't really do you much good. That is, the side handle doesn't do you much good because you're leaving a wedge down here at the bottom. So when you're trying to snap to the edge of the image, because you're trying to keep as much of it as possible, you want to drag the corner handles in order to get the proper snapping there. All right, so I'll go ahead and move it down to this location here. A certain amount of cropping of this foot is required, so I might as well get rid of the toes. Seems to be the best way. I don't want to keep some toes and leave others. I hate to get rid of any of the toes, but it's going to make it hard for this woman to walk later on. But anyway, this is looking pretty good. I'll drag this over a little bit, this edge. And once you've composed the shot the way that you want it, go ahead and press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac in order to go ahead and apply the crop. You can also click that check mark that we saw just a moment ago up there on the right-hand side of the options bar. And we now have a straight shot. Now, part of the problem at this point, I think it's composed about as well as it's going to be, but I did perform a permanent crop. So all that stuff that I cropped away is now totally gone. What if I want to keep the shot more flexible? Well, I'll go ahead and press Control-Z, Command-Z on the Mac to undo the crop, to restore the original version of the image. And let's go ahead and convert it to a layer up front. When you're working with a flat image that just has a background layer like this one right here, then you're going to crop away pixels permanently. But if you work with a floating layer, you can crop away the pixels temporarily, which is a great way to work. And you can convert this background layer to an independent floating layer just by double-clicking on it. And then we'll just go ahead and call it image or something along those lines. Click OK, and now it's a floating layer inside of Photoshop. Go ahead and redraw your crop boundary. You have to draw it from scratch. There's no way to save that crop boundary for later, not using the crop tool anyway. And we'll go ahead and move this around a little bit. We need to match the angle of the image, so I'm going to have to go through those same steps once again. Let's go ahead and zoom in so we can see what we're doing. I want to do a good job after all. Go ahead and drag this outside the boundary until we get it rotated properly in place. Go ahead and zoom out once again, a couple of clicks here actually. And let's make sure that we're matching the angle of our column with the vertical edge. We are. Let's drag by the corner handle because otherwise we're not going to get a good snap to the edge of the image and we're going to reveal some nasty empty areas in the background there. And once you've drawn the crop boundary the way that you want it, come up to the options bar. This is a very important step. And turn on hide. You've got to turn on hide. Otherwise, you're going to completely delete those pixels. And this is one of the things I don't like about the crop tool. Why did it do that? Why did it restore this to a perpendicular crop boundary? Geez. So anyway, I guess it's a tip, isn't it? In the future, you'll know to go ahead and turn on hide before you rotate your crop boundary. If for no other reason than because you saw me demonstrate the opposite here. All right, so let's go ahead and make sure that we're matching everything that we need to match. I love performing steps multiple times. It's always so fun. And let's go ahead and drag this crop boundary out to the edge here, that corner handle that is, so that we get the crop that we're looking for. Excellent. And maybe move it down. Actually, let's move this in a little bit, and I'll show you what I mean by recomposing the shot afterwards, thanks to the fact that we're working with a layered image. All right, so hide is turned on, so we're just going to hide those pixels. Press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac. We've straightened the image, but now I can go ahead and select the Move tool, and I can drag the image inside the crop frame in order to recompose it ever so slightly, if I so desire. And if I want to change the size of my crop boundary at this point, I can do so by going up to the image menu and choosing the canvas size command. And with canvas size, you can say, you know what? I want to take off 20 pixels from the width of the image, and I want to take off 50 pixels from the height of the image. Assuming that relative is turned on, you will be deleting these pixels, but of course, I'd have to have negative values, not positive values. We should see all arrows moving in on the chiclet to show that we are going to reduce the size of the canvas, which is the crop boundary. I'll click OK. Now, Photoshop is going to say, hey, the new canvas size is smaller than the current canvas size. Some clipping will occur, implying that we're going to lose some pixels. That turns out not to be the case. Proceed. It's not a problem because we have no background layer to clip. This layer, the image layer, is not going to be affected. And you can see that's the case because I can still drag it around and reveal portions of the image that I thought I had cropped away. So this is a very flexible way to work. First, convert your image to an independent layer and then apply the crop tool. Turn on the hide option up there in the options bar and then rotate your crop boundary. And you will get this, a picture-perfect version of a woman holding up the Leaning Tower of Pisa here inside Photoshop.